Welcome, folks. We're here with past councillor, past chair of the regional district, Robert Hobson, and there's an event coming up which we want to let you guys know, but it's also a good opportunity just to talk about life outside of council. How's it going?
It's going very well. I didn't realize I was so busy. It's not really retirement, it's just rebooting, I would say.
So what have you been up to since council concluded?
Well, the first thing we did, we went to India, which was really an interesting cultural experience for us. We wanted to do something outside our comfort zone after we retired, so that was the first thing that we did. That was kind of exciting. And we've been busy developing property and putting a suite in our house and that sort of thing. Which
hopefully going through the proper channels, get the approval, of course.
Absolutely. I have all the permits, and I now know why people are so frustrated with the city of Kelowna. But it all went very well. So I've been doing that and just sort of getting organized. As you know, we're spending more of our time in Edmonton, and we have family there, and our new grandson is there. So
congratulations.
That's great. And I'm still on some boards, and I just find life is incredibly busy.
I'm sure it would be. So when we talk to lots of people, the word legacy comes up when you've been on council for 26 years and also chair of the regional district. And we're here at Munson Pond today. I think, and perhaps you think as well, parks is probably one of your legacies. So talk to us. Let's maybe start about some of the things I'm realizing. You set in motion some plans 26 years ago that are now coming to fruition.
Yes, it does take a long time, and it takes multiple councils to achieve a long-term vision. And certainly the parks and trails were a passion for me. But the first passion really was creating a set of town centers and more compact mixed-use communities, and that really came out of a strategic planning process we did in the mid-1990s. And the community plan we have now and the direction of the city all comes out of the notion that we would have town centers in Rutland and South Pendosey and Orchard Park and downtown.
Because you've talked about the growth of our population moving forward. It's probably one of the things would you consider that one of our major issues, or well, how would you put that?
Absolutely. I knew the population was going to continue to grow when I was first on council in 1988. The city had been through several growth spurts in the 70s and early 80s, and we knew we were a very popular place for people to come. And there was a real push for development. We'd seen what had happened in Rutland in the 1970s. A lot of single-family subdivisions had gone in without a lot of services. There was not sewer in a lot of that area. There weren't sidewalks. And so we really wanted the next phase of development to be a smarter development. Okay. And the community really bought into that. And part of buying into it was we will live in higher density communities if we get access to green space, to green lungs. So the argument I made with councils over the years who were pretty gung-ho for development and not terribly interested in parks to start with was that it's kind of a deal you make with the public. You know, you have higher density, you have growth, but benefits come from growth. Right. And those benefits are things like arts and cultural legacies, bicycle paths, and parks. So making those attractive and accessible to people, having nature in the heart of the city was a really big thing for me, and it's part of the contract we have with the citizens, I think, to make it a livable community. Well,
you always and often talked about quality of life, and that the role of council is to ensure we're building the quality of life. So we're here at Munson Pond, so I'd actually never been here before. So tell us about this beautiful place that is actually owned by the city and has some future plans that you were part of establishing, I understand, with Walter Gray.
That's right. Well, before Walter and I were on council, I was a heritage planner, and I did a report on the heritage resources of the city, most of which were buildings. But there were 4 natural areas that I wanted to preserve as well, because I felt they're part of our cultural legacy. And Munson Pond was one of those 4. The other 3 were Maud Roxby Marsh, Black Mountain, and Crawford Falls, and all of those have come into the city system. It's taken 30 years to do that.
So the city moves very quickly is what you're saying?
No, you have to put the dollars in place and wait for the reserve funds to be available. You can't do things out of nowhere. That's why reserve funds are so important, so future councils have options. So in this case, we bought one piece of the pond back in the early 90s, and Walter and I both kind of fell in love with this pond for various reasons, and just felt having something like this in the heart of the city would be wonderful. And over the years, we bought up a second property, a third property, a fourth property. And finally, just before the end of the last council, we were able to make the last acquisition. And as a result of an ALR exclusion over to the south, we were able to get some buffering property as well. So the city now has this beautiful pond, which is very, very rich natural area, available for the public. And soon, council, in its wisdom, I'm sure, is going to provide public access to it.
So is that the advice you'd give to the new council? Because that's on the list, you know. But what I'm hearing you say is...
Well, now we own it, and we spent 30 years buying it. We should make it accessible to the public. And really, all we need to do at this point is to put a trail around it and remove some shacks and other buildings. And it will be accessible for the public.
So you talked about heritage also being something that was a passion of yours for years. So talk to me about some of your proudest legacies in regards to heritage and things that you see perhaps coming up with heritage in Kelowna.
Well, I was involved with all of the heritage projects in the city, I guess, after we moved back here in the early 1980s.
Wow, this man's a time traveler as well.
Yes, early 1980s. Goosegan Park, I helped plan the Goosegan Park with Gordon Hartley, who was the architect, and that was a really interesting project. We had to, in fact, reconstruct part of the house from historical photographs. So that was a big project. Benville Church, I was involved with that, with the Heritage Society. The Laurel Packing House, I got involved in the restoration of the Laurel Packing House when it was in its last stages, and kind of rescued it along with Ursula from lack of funds.
Great.
And so those were big projects. Brent's Mill, we identified Brent's Mill in our 1980s heritage inventory as the most important industrial site in the interior of the province, because it's the earliest industrial site outside of the Lower Mainland. It goes back to the early 1870s, and so I was involved with that once it became city property, moving it to its current site, where we hope it can at least be, if not restored, stabilized and interpreted. I think is probably as far as I would go with that building. I don't think you could fully restore it, but it's a very important building. We identified a lot of interesting buildings within the city, so part of our recommendations in that report were to set up heritage conservation areas in the Abbott Street area, and we now have two conservation areas, Abbott and Marshall.
You've also talked about the Benvolin Conservation Area too, right? You proposed that idea at some point.
Yes, that's the idea. There is a cultural corridor, as I would call it, and we would interpret features all the way from the Casorso Ranch House with then the Pendozi Mission, and you've got the Benvillian Church, and you have a lot of interesting historic sites and a lot of interesting agriculture along that route. So for tourists, it could be a place that combined, going for fresh local organic produce and visiting heritage sites. So yes, that's kind of my dream, is that corridor will become something which is interpreted appropriately for tourists.
So how is that? I mean, you have stepped off after pouring your life into the city and the regional district, and then now, I mean, I wanted to honor that by interviewing you today. That's the thought behind it, just to gather some of those thoughts and share them a little more broadly, because you've been working very hard behind the scenes. But so how is that now being off council and watching this? Like, is that a tough process to go through?
Well, I thought it would be, and for some others I think it might be, but actually I feel that I'm very comfortable with the people that have succeeded us, both at the city.
You're allowed to say you're not.
The region. I'm not being paid to say this. So I think we've got the right people with a view to take the long view on the city, and they're building on the work that we did and enhancing it. So I'm very happy with the direction that is occurring there, and so I don't actually feel that there was anything undone or an opportunity missed. We set things in place, policies, plans, reserves, and people are following up on those. So that's really exciting for me to know that we didn't just sort of leave things falling apart.
So what's next? What's the next steps for the next part of the journey? Where does that take you?
Well, for us, I'm going to be 66 in July, so I'm looking at doing a lot more traveling, a lot more learning. I'm probably going to go back to university and do some learning.
Perhaps some consulting. Are you looking at doing as well? Or?
Yes, I'm working with some consultants in Edmonton and possibly in BC, so we'll be doing some work there. not too much, I hope.
It's up to you, you know.
I'm
You can
supposed
choose
to be
that.
retired, you know.
Okay, well, what's called retirement? I was going to clarify. Are you retired now?
No, I don't think you could ever say you're officially retired anymore. There's so many things to do, and we're going to England in July, so we got lots of trips planned, and I still sit on some boards. So and I'd like to do more of that. I enjoy being on boards, but beyond that, there's now time to think about what I want to do in the day rather than having somebody else tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's quite nice.
That's good. So obviously, I want to shoot this interview. We've got an event coming up in April, and it's going to be all about just celebrating those 3 people that stepped off council that put decades in, kind of thing. So any thoughts as to your co-councillors that or your mayors that stepped down, kind of thing? I mean, it has been a transition. I mean, I think we changed the average age on council, dropped by 12 years, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good. Change is good, and continuity is good as well. No, I think Walter and Andre and I are all very happy with the direction that things have gone, and we had a great time together. We clicked in many ways. We came from different places, but we came together with our support for the future of the city. We were always positive and excited, and what I like is a can-do kind of approach on council, not a dog in the manger, everything is going to hell in a handbasket perspective. And we were 3 that were enthusiastic always about doing things.
Yeah.
It's much better to be positive and see opportunities rather than have millstones. And so I love working with both Walter and Andre, and they've gone on to do other exciting things, which is great. And our time was good.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for your time today. I really
pleasure.
appreciate the legacy you left, and
thank you very much.
all the best in your next endeavors.
I hope to be able in 30 years to interview you and
That'll be a good one.
learn about your legacy.